Dwight D. Eisenhower once said that leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something that you want done because he wants to do it. As the daughter of a former United States Air Force airman and a current United States Air Force Master Sergeant, I can attest to the truth of this quote as it applies to military leadership. Watching the movie Crimson Tide was really an eye-opener for me because I have several friends who are members of the United States Navy and the Coast Guard and the Marines and just basically every branch of the military and at many ranks within the military. And so watching this film, I was really able to, place myself in the shoes of not only, just seamen, but also higher ranking officials. And though I don't personally know a captain of the United States Navy, I felt very inspired by the situation that arose between Lieutenant Commander Hunter and Captain Ramsey. And so watching this film, I had a lot of thoughts going on as it applies to the lessons that we have learned in leadership over the last, several semesters for some of us. So today specifically, I want to talk to you all about the leadership styles utilized by Lieutenant Commander Hunter, who I will refer to from here on out as just Hunter, and Captain Ramsey, who I will refer to as Ramsey. And I want to talk about their specific leadership styles, how those mesh together, and how, in a perfect world, those leadership styles would have really balanced one another out and worked very well for each person's benefit. And I also want to touch on how, in this specific circumstance, in this specific case study, how those became, honestly, the downfall for one party and potentially both parties. And then I'm going to, bring this to a personal level because for me, watching anything that really has to do with the military is very personal to me because of my personal relationships with members of the military and my connections with some of them. And then I also want to bring it down to, a kind of base level of followership and discuss how, followers are what make a leader and leaders help make followers. So firstly today, I want to touch on Captain Ramsey and discuss how his autocratic leadership style, though it is very appropriate for military operations and it can definitely be a useful resource in certain stressful situations when it comes to military power, how being an autocratic leader in this certain instance was not really the best way to lead in this situation. So we're all very familiar with what autocratic leadership is, and so as an autocratic leader, Captain Ramsey, he gave the orders, and in the military, that is what followers expect. That is what is the norm. You have one leader who kind of gives the orders and sets out the rules, and all of the other people just kind of fall in line after that. And so when Captain Ramsey was using his autocratic leadership in this specific instance, when they were all on the brig and they had just gotten the message that was a little bit, muddied, it wasn't completely sure, there was no confirmation of said message, Captain Ramsey, used his autocratic leadership to kind of steamroll over the situation. And leaders, it is very important for leaders to, jump on to lead, to actually lead. But in the instance that his counterpart, Lieutenant Commander Hunter, was, giving him a little bit of resistance to Captain Ramsey's initial plan, Captain Ramsey just immediately, blew him out and he said, no, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to go over here. We're all familiar with that scene in the movie. So being an autocratic leader in that point in time and in that situation for the film was detrimental, absolutely, because we can all, understand that if you don't have all of the information, that can create issues and that can lead to problems further on down the road, or actually just even immediate problems, as it would have been if the USS Alabama had decided to attack. And so Captain Ramsey's counterpart, Lieutenant Commander Hunter, definitely used a more participative style of leadership. He was much more level-headed, I think, and more reasonable in his willingness to communicate with Captain Ramsay and to, talk to the other men surrounding him. And though he does kind of ebb on the line of autocratic leadership whenever the entire coup happened and he, shuffled Captain Ramsay away and he locked him into his room and he was, getting the problem out of the way. That was a little bit more autocratic leadership, but participative leaders sometimes have to have that kind of bruteness and that, decisiveness. And so he made the tough decisions, but then throughout the film, as Lieutenant Commander Hunter kind of fell back down again and they were eventually locked away as well, anybody that he decided to follow him, he didn't just punch orders at them. He said, "Are you with me or are you against me?" And those who were with him, he said, "Okay, well, here's my plan." And then he kind of let some of his followers jump in and make the decisions for themselves to act or to stay. And he didn't just, throw guns at them and say, "Go upstairs, let's take over the ship." He was more kind of giving his followers a decision, as in, do you want to go this route or do you want to try something else? Like, what's going on? Let's, though they didn't really have time to talk about it, he still gave them time to decide and to eventually act. And so with this, as I've said probably several times now, military operations and any type of biopic or film about military leadership in particular is very important to me. And so whenever I was watching Lieutenant Commander Hunter act and make his decisions, I found myself very inspired by his actions. And though, I subscribe to situational leadership, and so watching this, I didn't know exactly how I would have reacted in each of these situations and as each of these problems arose. But I did find myself, thinking that participative leadership was definitely the way to go, because laissez-faire leadership would not have worked. It just absolutely would not have worked. Because with laissez-faire, you would have been waiting for the other party in the ocean to attack. And so autocratic leadership was kind of like, ooh, let's go for it, let's attack. And then participative leadership was kind of, let's test the waters a little bit, pun intended. And so I would personally like to think that I would have chosen more of a participative leadership type of style. I'm not going to order these men to go and do all this crazy stuff. I'm going to, make the move. I'm not going to stand in one place and throw out all these orders. I might go with you to do these things. I might give you an option to do these things. And if you feel that you are not fit to do it, I will step in. And so lastly, each of the followers in the film were very important to the whole picture. And so when, in a specific scene, when some of the men took Captain Ramsay to his room and they were stationed outside of his door and they were, locking him in there and they were keeping him in the room. And though he didn't try and test the door and he didn't try and, really break past them at all or anything, they were absolutely conformist followers. And in this kind of instance, they were acting under the leadership from an autocratic leader who would have been Lieutenant Commander Hunter in this particular scene. And so as the men have locked their superior in their room, though they might not think that it is the best decision, though they might not even agree with Lieutenant Commander Hunter's decision to have him put away, rank and authority kind of forced them into making this decision and into thinking that this was what needed to be done. And so these men were absolutely conformist followers, and they conformed to the wishes of their leader, which happens a lot in the military because you're following a directive and you're following orders. And I think that's what's very important. Being a follower, you have to decide for yourself, if this is the right way to go, if this is the wrong way to go. And then a lot of times, even if you think that it's the wrong way to go, you really kind of can't help it. So, whenever we're looking at military leaders and just leaders in general, it's incredibly crucial to consider not only the leaders, but also the followers. And then whenever you're watching a case study or thinking about a case study, it's always important to think about how you would react. And then hopefully that can help you later on down the road in deciding, oh, I've seen something similar to this. Maybe it didn't work out for them, so perhaps, autocratic leadership isn't going to work out for me in diffusing a situation.